What is up, you guys? I hope you're all doing well. I'm Tony Fuentes and welcome back to the Edit Like series. In this case, we're going to edit like Valdays or Valentyn Syenin. He's a Canadian travel photographer who takes a lot of photographs in tropical places, but also in his home country. Now, his style really resembles something like Jay Alvarez's style. So let's jump into his style in Instagram. Let's analyze it, break it down, and then we'll go to Instagram and create a preset and see how it applies or how it performs on different scenarios. So let's jump into it. So this is his profile on Instagram, Valdays for Valentyn Syenin. If you want to go support him, go ahead and follow him. You can also buy his LUTs and his presets on his shop. And immediately what we can see is that his style is very contrasty, very harsh on the blacks, and also quite desaturated. Now throughout his profile there's a lot of styles and various scenarios where he takes photographs. So there's a tendency to have high contrast in his images, but the style that we're going to analyze in particular is the most recurring style in his feed, which is the tropical island or the jungle like colors. Here, if we click on one, here we can see that the blacks are very crushed, the greens are completely desaturated, and the skin tones are very yellows and orangey, like if it were a very tan color. If we keep scrolling down, that style or that preset is the one that he most uses. Again, here we can see that the highlights are very dimmed down. That's why we have so much information in the clouds. They're not blown out or anything like that. Blacks are completely crushed, and that's done in the tone curve. And again, here we can see the before and the after to give us a hint on what we're going to do in the editing process. Now, one thing that's very important is the skin tones in his style. They're a bit like Luis' class style, one that we did a couple of weeks back. I'll link it up here in the cards. And once again, we keep scrolling down. This is his style. It has a bit of dehaze, a bit of clarity, and a bit of shenanigans in the camera calibration. One thing that we can notice is that the oranges and the reds are basically the same, just altered a little bit, but they're not completely desaturated like the greens. Here we can see the oranges really stand out within the lush desaturated palm trees. So this image basically represents the style that we're going to edit. Greens completely desaturated, tending towards the emerald greens, and the skin tones all the way out to the tan colors. So this is his style. It kind of reminds me of the Black Paris style, where everything is desaturated but the skin tones, but this one is applied to the lush forests and jungles in the tropical islands. Now there's a little variant here. Here we can see the same style, but in contrast to that, we can see that the blacks have this bluish tint that's down in the channels in the RGB tone curve. So let's jump into Lightroom and edit this, guys. So guys, these are the photos that we're going to edit. I tried to pick very vivid greens on these images and with the sunlight beaming down, but we have some exceptions like these four, which are shot on an overcast day. So let's start off by editing this one of myself, heading down to the develop tab. And remember, if you want to skip this tutorial in general, I just want this preset that we're going to create, I'm just going to put it over here in my edit like preset pack, which is here. Here we can see the final results of the two that we're going to make. So that's a way you can just skip all this that we're going to do. But if you're interested in seeing how to achieve this type of color grading and to see how you can implement this to your profile style, just stay along. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is pull down the highlights all the way to the -100, so we have a lot of information in the blown out skies. Then we're going to do the opposite with the shadows, pull them up to a +100. White also, we want them to be completely dimmed down, -100. I know this seems a bit extreme, guys, but don't worry, we're going to compensate that in the tone curve. Now the blacks, we're going to crush them down to a -59 to crush them a bit. Here we can see that everything is a bit more contrasty like his style. And then we're going to jump into the presence tab. Now texture, we're not going to move it. We are going to add some clarity with a +21. And then we're going to add some dehaze with a -14, and this basically adds this gloomy effect towards the highlights, like if it was shot with a Black Pro mist or something like that. And then we're going to desaturate a bit with the vibrance with a -13 and a -8 on the saturation. Now the differences between vibrance and saturation is that saturation basically alters every single color of your image, whether it be saturating it or desaturating it, while vibrance only alters the colors that are not the most predominant colors in your image. So for example, here if we reduce the vibrance, we can see that some of the greens or the most colorful greens remain in the image, whilst if we do the same with the saturation, everything is completely dimmed down. So -13 and -8 once again. Then in the tone curve, what we want to do is add some contrast, guys. So we're going to put a point in the shadows, pull it down just below the diagonal, then a point in the highlights and pull it just above to make this hard contrasty look. Then the blacks, we want to crush them up just a little bit, fade them away, not too much, but something around there. And then we're going to jump into the color grading part. Now this part on the color grading is quite new. We can see that split toning has been replaced by color grading, and this is the same palettes that we have when we edit video. We have the midtones, we have the shadows and the highlights. Previously we only had the shadows versus the highlights, guys. But first of all, in HSL. Now the first thing that we want to do is desaturate everything, guys. We're going to go with a -21 on the reds, -25 on the oranges, -62 on the yellows, which will control most parts of the greens, and then the greens all the way down to the -100. That will give us that desaturated effect on the greens. Then aquas and blues, we're going to go with a -26 on both of them, and these basically will affect the saturation on the sky. Now in Luminance, the only thing that we're going to do is pump up the oranges just a bit to make the skin tones pop just a little bit more with a +10, and then we're going to go with a -22 and 25 to the blues and the aquas. Again, this is towards the skies and the color that we're going to achieve in the skies when we have a bright sunny day. Then in hue, what we're going to do is alter the yellows to a +27, heading towards the more greenish tones, and then the greens, basically we're going to alter them to a +36, tending towards that emerald color for the greens in general. Aquas to a +25 towards a more dark bluish tones, and also with a +5 to the blues. We don't want any aqua-like skies or anything like that. We want them to be deep blue and quite darkened. So that's it for HSL. Still, we're going to add a little bit of highlights. In the highlights, we're just going to add a little bit of orangey tone. That's for the skin tones in general. Not too much, guys, just a little bit. Just like that, you can copy it. And then we're going to go all the way down to the effects. And in effects, we're just going to add a +25 on the grain to make it a bit subtle. Here we can see it if we zoom in. It's quite subtle, but it just adds a little bit of texture to the image. And then in camera calibration, we're going to add those rich skin tones or orangey-like skin tones to make the subject look very tan. With the red primary, we can see that if we move to the left, the skin tones tend towards the bluish tones or the purplish, to the right towards the oranges. So we're going to go with a +20 on the hue and a +21 on the saturation, tending towards that orangey tones. And then the green primary, again, we move it to one side, it really affects the skin tones, to the other, makes them a bit more orangey, go with a +100, and on the saturation with a -28. And then the blue will basically alter the bluish tones in my pants, for example, in my trousers, and also in the sky. We're going to go with a -21 and a -18 on the saturation. Now the preset is almost finished. Now we're just going to add a little bit more temperature to make those skin tones really pop up. Just a little bit, not too much, because we don't want the whole image to be completely warm. We just want it to pull it up just a little bit, just to affect the skin tones. Just like that, guys. Just pull up the exposure just a little bit for this image. And this is the preset in general. This is the V1. We're just going to add a little variant in a little while. But first we're going to save it. We're going to go to the right, hit on presets in this plus sign, create a preset, and we're going to check mark everything that we want to pass on to the next images. In this case, I am going to check mark white balancing, but exposure and contrast will depend on each image. And then if we want to create a variant, the one that had the bluish tones in the blacks, we're just going to go to the tone curve, hit the blue channel, create a point in the midtones, and pull up the blacks just a little bit, just like that, guys. And now we can see that the blacks have this bluish tone added to them, guys. Create another preset, and this one's going to be Valdays blue, just like that, guys. We create another preset. So let's see how it performs on other images, guys. So here we have a portrait of my friend Kevin, just pretending to be a cameraman, just for the sake of the shot. Let's apply the preset. Here we can see that I've already added into the edit like preset pack. So the first one, it looks quite good, guys. Awesome skin tones. The skin tones are very orangey, just what we expected. And the greens are completely desaturated, just like we wanted. Maybe in this case, just pull up the temperature just a little bit more to make those skin tones a bit more rich. Now let's see what the other one looks like. The bluish tones, here we can see it. It's a little variant, it looks good as well. Then we have this one. Here we have the blown out sky. Let's see how it performs. Apply the first one. Here we can see how the sky has a lot more information because we dimmed down the highlights. Next we have this one of Danny in a very warm day. Let's apply the preset, amp up the exposure, just correct it just a little bit. It's looking awesome, guys. I love how the greens are completely desaturated and really contrast with the warmish skin tones or very tan skin tones that we achieved. This one is of the same day. Let's apply it, amp up the exposure. It's looking awesome, guys. Those greens are very nice and the skin tones are quite nice as well. Let's see how the other one performs. And again, it's a little variant. It's quite nice as well, but I think I do prefer the first one. And finally, we have these others. Let's see how it performs in an overcast day, not so much sun. So let's see the first one. Yeah, it looks awesome, guys. Just pull up the exposure just a little bit. Looks awesome also in overcast photographs. Let's see the blue one. Again, quite nice, a bit more cold. And that's basically it, guys. So that's Valentyn Syenin style, guys. I've already added these two presets I've just created into the Edit preset pack. If you want to go check it out, it's linked down below, where we have plus 14 presets of famous artists and photographers throughout social media. So guys, remember that in the comment sections down below, you can type in any profile that you want me to analyze and I'll give it a go. Anyway, guys, if you did like the video, can you please give it a like? It really makes a difference. And remember that you can share this video. Please share it if you can to anyone who's interested in color grading. It really helps me out. Anyway, guys, subscribe, all those things. Hope you're doing well, staying safe. I'm Tony Fuentes. Cheers to all of you and see you in the next one.